Tired of that same old breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Same old tasting scrambled eggs, burger, that dinner steak, ribs, or pork chops. Why not add a little bit of spice or just a touch of heat to make the difference? Change that scrambled egg with a little bit of Johnny Fabulous's John Cena Sr.'s $1 Million Jalapeno Hot Sauce. Great on burgers, steaks, chops, and those barbecued ribs.
And APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your security needs. Call 631-390-9050. That's 631-390-9050. APB.
Say 4 years, and I started actually between my sophomore and junior year at UTA, and when I was enrolled in college, you couldn't back then, the NCAA, you couldn't be pro and get paid. So the only time I wrestled until I graduated in 1982 was in the summer. And I wrestled in the summer of 80 and 81, and then I went full-time in 82 when I graduated college.
WCCW goes national. At this point, with that roster, when WCCW went national, did you think they were going to take over the world? Because the talent level that was going on in Texas was absurd. And did you think at the time that you could take over the country, the world, beat out the Vince McMahon East Coast stuff? I mean, what were your thoughts when it went national?
Well, I think in the beginning, I was young and didn't really think a lot about it, but I'll never forget it. Fritz brought me and Kerry into his office at their house one day, and he said, "I'm about to make a big move. We're gonna break away from the NWA, and we're gonna be world-class championship wrestling. And there's this thing called cable TV." And me and Kerry kind of looked around like, what's that? And he already knew. He knew what time it was and what was going to happen. And he was a smart man. He was a businessman to the core, man. He was extremely intelligent when it come to business. And to answer your question, no, I didn't realize how big it was going to be. I don't think anybody did. When you're in your infancy, on a business or whatever you're going for. But as it went on, I really saw. I went to New York in 2018 for a get together up there, and I bet I had at least 1,000 people come up to me that weekend and say, "Man, I loved World Class Wrestling on ESPN." He said, "Y'all's show and wrestling was head and shoulders above everything else. The way it was produced, the talent, and all that." And looking back, I was really honored to be a part of it, and still am. So I have people all the time still talking about World Class Wrestling.
Well, it's amazing how many fans love that organization. I mean, every wrestler there, just incredible.
It's great stuff.
It was so much different than what we were huge WWE guys, obviously, but it was so different.
Different presentation, very different.
So, Brian, your first heel turn is against Mike Von Erich, who recently, at that point, just gets out of the hospital. The question to you is, what kind of pressure were you under? I mean, that's a big deal, right? The guy was certainly fragile. I'm sure Fritz put you in that spot because he trusted you, but what kind of stress was that for you as being his opponent?
Well, I think Fritz and I kind of came up with the idea at the same time, for me turning heel. You were never going to be above the Von Erichs as a babyface here in World Class. And Kerry had his motorcycle wreck and had hurt his foot. He was out. And, they needed somebody, and it just made sense. I came up, everybody knew I was their friend. And what's the worst thing that could ever happen is having your friend turn on you, and then turning on Mike. Answer your question, yes. He knew he could trust me, that I was not going to eat Mike up, and I always made him look really good, and put him over just like a $1,000,000. But nobody ever beat Mike 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring except me. When I did my heel turn, that was the only time Mike Von Erich got pinned 1, 2, 3 in the ring. I mean, he worked with Flair and everybody else, and nobody ever beat him. They'd go Broadway or something. But when I saw that Fritz was willing to do that and put me in that position, I knew I was carrying a big load on my shoulders as far as being a heel. And when I turned heel, I had to watch out what I was doing around here in Dallas, because they idolized the Von Erichs, and people wanted to kick my ass and beat me up every time I went somewhere, so I was carrying a pistol when I turned heel, for good reason. I had people wanting to just get me constantly.
On a personal level, though, and you would know, did you think Mike should have been in the ring after all that? Do you, as fans, you heard he was never the same after that toxic syndrome. Did you personally feel that they shouldn't have put him back in the ring?
Well, there's a fine line there. Kerry had got hurt. David had passed away. So Mike was kind of thrust into that position. But personally, I love Mike to death. He was just a sweetheart of a guy. I really don't think he ever should have been in wrestling, if the truth be known, because he just wasn't cut out for it. Really, he had a bunch of guitars. He wanted to play music and play rock and roll. So his mind wasn't really into it, and his everything. But after he got the toxic shock and came back, he was different. He had a different look in his eye. But I had in wrestling, I had a job to do. So me calling the shots whether he should have been there or not, I was just, I was part of the program and doing what I was asked to do and draw money, and that's what we did, But I don't think Mike's heart was ever into wrestling, and he probably could have been better served doing something else.